Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that feels almost counterintuitive in our world of social media, oversharing, and constant connectivity. Don't tell people about your problems. Now, before you think I'm suggesting you bottle everything up, I want to explore why it's important to be selective with whom you share your struggles and how doing so can actually empower you. We live in an age where vulnerability is celebrated, and don't get me wrong, vulnerability is powerful. But there's a delicate balance between being vulnerable in a healthy way and oversharing in ways that leave us feeling more exposed than supported. Our problems, our pain, our challenges are deeply personal, and not everyone deserves access to that part of us. It's not about pretending that everything is fine, but rather it's about being intentional with where and with whom we share our most intimate challenges. When we tell too many people about our problems, we risk drowning ourselves in feedback that can cloud our ability to find clarity. Worse, we can sometimes open the door to judgment, unwanted advice, or even people who diminish our struggles. There's immense power in reserving those vulnerable conversations for those who've earned the right to hear our story. So today, I'm asking you to rethink the impulse to overshare. Instead, find strength in being discerning. When you stop telling everyone about your problems, you learn to trust your inner voice, find resilience, and preserve the energy needed to move forward. Not everyone deserves access to your struggles. Reserve your most vulnerable stories for people who have shown they can hold them with care and respect. Oversharing can lead to overexposure. Sharing too much too soon with too many people can leave you feeling raw and exposed without getting the support you need. A few trusted individuals who understand and support you are far more valuable than broadcasting your problems to many. Constantly retelling your story can deplete your emotional reserves. Preserve your energy for healing and action. Sharing your struggles with everyone invites a flood of opinions that can cloud your judgment. Instead, reflect and share with trusted people for true clarity. Not everyone will understand the depth of your pain. Sharing with the wrong people can make you feel invalidated or misunderstood. When you open up too broadly, you invite advice that might be unhelpful or even harmful to your healing process. You control your narrative. Don't feel pressured to share it until you're ready, and only with those who have earned your trust. True vulnerability is an act of courage, but it's most meaningful when shared with the right people who can hold that space for you. Before telling anyone, sit with your feelings and your thoughts. Processing on your own helps you build resilience and approach challenges from a place of strength rather than relying on external validation. Not everyone in your life has earned the right to hear your struggles. It can be tempting to open up to anyone who will listen when you're going through something hard, but it's important to recognize that your personal story is precious. It's not about putting up walls or closing yourself off to the world. It's about understanding that sharing your pain, your challenges, or your fears should be an act of trust and connection, not a response to pressure or desperation. When you share with the wrong people, people who haven't shown you compassion, empathy, or support, you risk exposing yourself to misunderstanding, judgment, or even worse, indifference. Some people, without meaning to, may diminish what you're going through because they don't have the capacity to hold space for your experience. That can leave you feeling even more isolated and invalidated. It's important to be discerning about who you let into your inner world. Not everyone has the emotional bandwidth or the empathy required to support you in a meaningful way. And that's okay. It doesn't make them bad people, but it does mean they're not the right people to lean on during those vulnerable moments. When you reserve your struggles for those who have earned your trust, you protect your emotional well-being. You create a safer space where your story can be held with care, where your feelings are respected, and where you can receive the support you need. Sharing is powerful, but only when it happens in the right context with the right people. When you overshare, you open yourself up in ways that can leave you feeling raw and vulnerable, sometimes more than you intended. There's a difference between healthy vulnerability and overexposure, and it's easy to blur the lines. In moments of emotional overwhelm, we might feel an urge to spill everything, to unload our worries, pain, or confusion to anyone who will listen. But sharing too much, too soon, with too many people can backfire. What often happens is that rather than feeling supported or understood, you end up feeling exposed. It's like you've let people into a part of your world that's still messy, fragile, and in the process of healing. Not everyone is equipped to handle that, and not every environment is safe for that kind of openness. Instead of receiving empathy, you might be met with indifference, judgment, or superficial responses that don't honor the depth of what you're going through. And that can hurt even more. There's also a cost to constantly sharing your struggles with others. It can drain your emotional energy and leave you more focused on retelling your story than on healing from it. Every time you retell that story, Especially to people who aren't equipped to offer meaningful support, you risk feeling like your pain is being trivialized. You lose control of your narrative. Suddenly, it's not about your healing journey, it's about managing the responses of others. When you overshare, you also invite unwanted advice, opinions, and perspectives that can add confusion rather than clarity. People will offer their solutions or try to fix things for you, even when that's not what you need. This can lead to feeling misunderstood, and worse, it can divert your focus from your own inner work toward pleasing or placating others. Being vulnerable is courageous, but it requires boundaries. When you share selectively and thoughtfully, you maintain a sense of agency over your experience. You protect your emotional energy, your story, and your process of healing. In moments of hardship, it's natural to want to reach out to find comfort in others, but when it comes to sharing your struggles, the depth of the connection matters far more than the number of people you tell. You don't need a crowd, you need a few trusted individuals who truly get it, who have earned the right to hear your story. Quality over quantity. Think about it, there's a difference between having a conversation that leaves you feeling understood and supported versus telling 10 people and feeling like no one really heard you. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the more people you share with, the more support you'll receive. But in reality, spreading your vulnerability too thin can dilute the experience, leaving you feeling scattered and emotionally drained. Real connection comes from those who are willing to sit with you in the discomfort, who won't rush to fix things or offer empty platitudes. They hold space for your pain without judgment, offering their presence rather than just advice. It's the people who listen fully, who ask how they can support you, and who make you feel safe in your vulnerability. That's the kind of connection that fosters healing. When you focus on quality, you give yourself the gift of meaningful support. Instead of searching for validation in many places, you find it in a few trusted relationships that actually sustain you. It's not about how many people are in your corner, it's about the depth of the connection you share with the ones who are. Those few people can be the steady, reliable source of strength you need without the emotional noise that often comes from oversharing with too many. Choosing to confide in a small circle doesn't mean shutting people out, it's about honoring your own boundaries and emotional well-being. It's trusting that you deserve to be supported by people who truly care, not just anyone who's willing to listen. Your emotional energy is precious, and protecting it is an act of self-respect. When you're going through something difficult, it's easy to get caught up in the impulse to share your feelings with others, hoping for relief or understanding. But not every conversation will give you what you need, and if you're not careful, you can end up feeling more drained than supported. Every time you share your struggles, you're spending emotional energy. Retelling your story, explaining your feelings, and processing other people's reactions can take a lot out of you. If you're not mindful, you may find yourself exhausted, not just from the struggle itself, but from managing the impact of constantly reliving it with others. There's a fine line between reaching out for support and depleting yourself by overextending your emotional resources. It's important to recognize that not everyone is capable of holding space for your pain in a way that feels nourishing. Some people may unintentionally project their own issues onto your experience, offer advice that misses the mark, or respond in ways that leave you feeling misunderstood or unseen. When that happens, it's not just disappointing, it's draining. You end up using more energy to navigate their reactions than to focus on your own healing. Protecting your emotional energy means being selective about where and with whom you share your struggles. It's about knowing your limits and setting boundaries around how much of your emotional world you allow others to access. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is to take a step back, process your feelings internally, or lean on a few trusted people who have proven they can support you without taking more than they give. When you protect your emotional energy, you conserve it for what really matters: your own healing, growth, and well-being. You create space to process your feelings on your own terms, in your own time, without the pressure of external expectations. It's about prioritizing your own emotional health, knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup. By guarding your energy, you ensure that you have enough left to keep moving forward, even in the hardest moments. Clarity, real clarity, comes from within. It's something we often forget when we're overwhelmed by a problem or caught in a difficult moment. In the rush to make sense of what we're feeling or experiencing, we might reach out to others, hoping they'll offer a perspective that will make everything clear. But the truth is, when we look to too many people for answers, we end up clouding our own intuition. It's tempting to crowdsource opinions, especially when we're feeling lost. We want reassurance, validation, or maybe just someone to tell us what to do. But when we rely too much on other people's perspectives, we risk losing touch with our own inner voice. The more you share your struggles with different people, the more conflicting feedback you receive. One person might tell you to take action. Another might tell you to wait it out. Some might not understand your situation fully and offer advice that doesn't resonate at all. Before you know it, you're left with a jumble of opinions that only add to your confusion. Reflection, on the other hand, is where true clarity lives. When you sit with your feelings, give yourself space to think and process what's happening on your own terms, you can begin to see things more clearly. It's in those quiet moments, away from the noise of other voices, that you can tap into your own wisdom. You may not have all the answers right away, but by reflecting on what's truly important to you, what your values are, and what feels right in your gut, you start to find your way. That doesn't mean you should never seek advice or support from others, but the key is to be selective about who you turn to and to remember that their insights are just that, insights, not answers. Your path forward is something only you can truly discern. And that requires trusting yourself enough to listen to your own thoughts and feelings before you reach out for external input. By prioritizing reflection, you're not closing yourself off from others, but you are ensuring that when you do seek advice, you're coming from a place of groundedness. You're clear on what you need, what you're asking for, and how to move forward in a way that aligns with who you are. That's where real clarity comes from, trusting your own voice above all others. When we share our pain or struggles with others, we do it with the hope of feeling understood and supported. But sometimes, instead of receiving the empathy we need, we're met with responses that make us feel like our experience is being minimized. This can happen when someone tries to offer perspective too quickly, telling you things like, it could be worse, or at least you have something good going on. While these responses may come from a well-meaning place, they can unintentionally dismiss the weight of what you're going through. The reality is, not everyone is capable of holding space for your pain in a way that honors its depth. Some people might feel uncomfortable with vulnerability, or they may have a habit of downplaying challenges because they don't know how to deal with the discomfort that comes with hearing about someone else's struggle. In these cases, their instinct is to jump to solutions or offer silver linings, even when that's not what you need. And that can leave you feeling unseen, unheard, and worse, like your feelings don't matter. There's nothing more isolating than having your pain invalidated by someone who brushes it aside or tries to fix it too quickly. When people minimize your experience, they're often trying to make things feel lighter, but in doing so, they're failing to recognize the emotional weight you're carrying. It's not just the words they use, it's the energy behind them. You may walk away from the conversation feeling like you shouldn't be struggling as much as you are, or that maybe your problem isn't as important as you thought. But your experience is valid no matter how anyone else reacts. Just because someone else can't fully grasp the depth of your feelings doesn't make those feelings any less real. It's important to surround yourself with people who can meet you where you are, who don't try to fix you, downplay your situation, or offer surface-level solutions. Instead, they acknowledge that what you're going through is hard and offer their presence without judgment or the need to make it go away. Remember, it's okay to protect yourself from people who minimize your experience. You don't owe anyone access to your struggles, especially if they don't have the capacity to hold your story with care. Finding people who truly understand or are at least willing to sit with you in your pain is key to feeling supported. Not everyone will be able to do that. And that's okay, but it's up to you to be selective about who you let in. Unsolicited advice often comes from a good place, people genuinely want to help. But even with the best intentions, advice that you didn't ask for can feel more like a burden than a gift. When you're going through something tough and someone immediately jumps in with solutions, it can leave you feeling unheard, like they've skipped over the part where you just needed to express how you're feeling. Sometimes you're not looking for someone to fix things, you're just looking for someone to listen. When people offer advice without being asked, it's often a reflection of their discomfort with vulnerability. They want to do something, anything, to make the situation better because sitting with someone's pain or struggle feels uncomfortable. But rushing in with solutions can undermine the emotional space you need to process what's going on. It sends the message, you should be doing this, or here's the answer, when in reality there might not be a clear answer, or you might not be ready for one. Unsolicited advice can also create pressure. When someone offers you their take on what you should do, it can make you feel like you need to follow it, even if it doesn't align with your instincts. It can make you second guess yourself, layering on confusion when what you need is clarity. In trying to help, people may end up adding to your emotional load by giving you more things to think about, more options to consider, and more external voices to navigate. And sometimes the advice doesn't resonate at all because it's not tailored to your specific situation. No one else fully understands the nuances of what you're going through, your emotions, your history, your personal context. What might seem like a simple solution to someone else could be completely off the mark for you. That's why unsolicited advice often misses the point. It's based on someone else's view of the situation, not on what you really need in the moment. What's most helpful often isn't advice, but present, someone who is willing to sit with you in the mess of it without trying to fix it. A space where you can express yourself without feeling like you have to act on every piece of feedback you receive. When you're ready for advice, you'll ask, Until then, what you might need most is someone who simply listens, acknowledges your feelings, and trusts that you are capable of finding your own way through. It's okay to gently push back when you're not ready for advice. You can say, I'm not looking for solutions right now, just a listening ear. This helps protect your emotional space and ensures that the conversation stays focused on what you need in that moment. Because sometimes the best support doesn't come from someone telling you what to do, it comes from someone sitting with you, offering their empathy, and believing in your ability to navigate your own path. Your story, your struggles, your triumphs, your most vulnerable moments deserves to be told with care. It's a deeply personal narrative shaped by your experiences, emotions, and the challenges you faced. Not everyone understands the weight of your story or the significance of what you've been through, and that's why it's so important to be intentional about how, when, and with whom you share it. Too often, we feel pressure to tell our story before we're ready. Maybe it's the push to be open, to be vulnerable, or to be seen. But sharing your story is a choice, and it should never be rushed or done for the sake of someone else's expectations. Your story is not a performance, and it's not something you owe to anyone. It's yours, and you get to decide when it's time to share and with whom. When you do share, it's essential to choose people who will honor your story, who will listen without judgment, without trying to fix it, and without diminishing what you've gone through. The right person will understand that your story is not just words, it's the reflection of your lived experience. It carries emotional depth, personal significance, and often vulnerability that needs to be handled with care. Telling your story before it's ready, or with people who haven't earned your trust, can leave you feeling exposed or even hurt. Some people may respond with advice or critique when all you needed was someone to listen. Others might be uncomfortable with your vulnerability and try to steer the conversation in a way that minimizes your feelings. In these moments, you can walk away feeling invalidated, as if your story didn't matter in the way it should. But when you tell your story to someone who holds it with care, it becomes a healing process. They create a safe space where you can unpack your emotions, reflect on your journey, and feel supported in your vulnerability. These are the people who don't rush you, who don't ask for more than you're ready to give, and who understand the courage it takes to share something so personal. Your story deserves to be met with compassion and understanding, not judgment or haste, and you deserve to feel empowered in how you share it. This is why boundaries are so important, because your story is a part of you, and not everyone is ready or willing to hold it with the tenderness it deserves. You get to choose the moment, the person, and the context in which your story is shared, ensuring that when you do speak your truth, it's met with the respect and care it's worthy of. Ultimately, telling your story is a powerful act of reclaiming your narrative. It's about finding the right time, the right people, and the right space to honor what you've been through. You don't owe your story to anyone, but when you do share it, make sure it's with those who understand its value and are willing to carry it with the care it deserves. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools we have as human beings. It's the place where connection, courage, and authenticity are born. When we open ourselves up, when we let others see the parts of us that are most tender, the pain, the fear, the uncertainty, we invite the possibility of deep, meaningful relationships. But as powerful as vulnerability is, it's not something to be shared with just anyone. Not everyone has the capacity to handle it, and not every situation is safe for it. There's a misconception that being vulnerable means you should always be open, that you should share your feelings and struggles with everyone in order to live authentically. But true vulnerability is about discernment. It's about knowing when and with whom to share. It's about choosing the right moments and the right people, those who have shown they can be trusted to hold your story with compassion, empathy, and care. Vulnerability requires courage, but it also requires boundaries. Just because you're willing to be open doesn't mean everyone is capable of receiving you in that space. Some people might meet your vulnerability with discomfort, judgment, or even rejection, not because there's something wrong with you, but because they're not prepared to handle that level of openness. They might not know how to respond, or they may project their own fears and insecurities onto you. And that can leave you feeling even more exposed and isolated than before. It's important to remember that vulnerability is a gift, and not everyone deserves access to it. When you share the most delicate parts of yourself with people who haven't earned that privilege, you risk feeling invalidated or misunderstood. Your vulnerability is not meant to be thrown out into the world haphazardly. It's something to be protected, shared with those who have shown they are capable of holding it with respect. When you choose carefully, vulnerability can transform relationships. It allows for deeper connection, for empathy, for the kind of support that strengthens bonds. But when you're not careful, when you share too much with the wrong people, it can lead to hurt, shame, or a sense of betrayal. And that's why it's so crucial to recognize that not everyone is ready to receive your vulnerability. and that's okay. Part of owning your vulnerability is knowing when to hold back. It's understanding that you are not required to be open with everyone just because vulnerability is celebrated. You have the right to protect your heart, to be selective about who gets to see the real you. True strength lies in that discernment, in knowing that vulnerability is a choice and choosing to share it wisely. By honoring your boundaries, you ensure that when you are vulnerable, it's a powerful and intentional act. You get to show up fully in spaces where you know you'll be met with compassion, rather than in places where your openness might be met with judgment. Vulnerability is an incredible force for connection, but only when it's shared with people who understand its value and are willing to meet you there with care.